You're listening to the Mind Manual Podcast, episode 54, Healing at the Root. If you want a particular result in your life, but you're unable to get it, tune in to start training your brain and expanding your emotional intelligence to unlock the most powerful and underutilized performance tool that we have. It's the most important work you could do because it affects every area of your life. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something that sits at the very heart of healing. Not just feeling better for a moment, not just coping, but truly transforming the patterns that keep repeating in our lives. Have you ever noticed that sometimes, no matter how much work you do on yourself, certain things just keep showing up? Maybe it's a pattern in your relationships. You find yourself people-pleasing again, even though you swore you'd set better boundaries. Or maybe perfectionism keeps creeping back in, that inner critic whispering, you have to get it right, or you're not enough. Or perhaps anxiety and depression reappears like an old familiar shadow, even after you thought you'd moved past it. And you think, why does this keep happening? What am I missing? That question, why does this keep showing up, is actually the doorway to real healing. Because healing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about understanding what's beneath, the deeper story, the wound that those patterns are trying to protect. Today we're going to explore what it really means to heal from the root cause, not just manage the symptoms. And we're going to use one of the most powerful frameworks that I know, which is internal family systems, or IFS for short. It's a model that helps us meet every part of ourselves with compassion, curiosity, and understanding. So let's start by unpacking what's really going on when our patterns keep repeating. Let's imagine this for a second. You're tending to a plant that keeps wilting. Every week, the leaves droop, so you keep trimming them, watering more, adding fertilizer. Nothing changes. At some point, you realize the issue isn't the leaves, it's the roots. They're suffocating under compacted soil. No matter what you do above the surface, the plant can't thrive because the foundation isn't being cared for. Our emotional patterns work the same way. When we keep trying to change behaviors, stop procrastinating, be less anxious, stop overthinking, we're trimming the leaves. But the real shift comes when we understand why that behavior grew in the first place. That's what we mean by healing the root cause. So let's talk about some common patterns that many of us experience. Perfectionism being one. I was definitely a candidate for that. That drive to get it right, to never make mistakes, to always appear put together. Anxiety, the constant scanning for what could go wrong. And the good old familiar depression, the feeling of being shut down, disconnected, hopeless. And then there's self-sabotage as well, that habit of pulling the rug out from under our own feet and things start to go well. It's easy to see these flaws or signs that something's wrong with us. But what if, and stay with me here for a bit, what if every one of those patterns is actually trying to help you? What if the part of you that self-sabotages is just trying to protect you from disappointment? What if perfectionism is an armor your system built to keep you safe from rejection, shame, or deeper still, in protecting the part that holds an original wound of being forgotten or neglected from ever getting activated? So being perfect and being better there means that you will be noticed by others. Therefore, never forgotten. What if your anxiety is your body's way of saying, I'm scared to relax because the last time I did, something bad, really bad happened. When we see our patterns through that lens, everything shifts. We stop fighting ourselves. We start listening. So when we apply the IFS lens or internal family systems, it's a doorway through which we can begin to understand our inner system. It was developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz in the 1980s and offers a revolutionary way of understanding the mind. And it starts with a simple but profound idea that we are not one single unified self. We are a system of parts. Think about it. Part of you wants to take a leap of faith and start the new business. Another part says, are you crazy? You will fail. Part of you wants connection. Another part wants to hide. Part of you is full of hope. Another part is full of fear. IFS doesn't pathologize that inner conflict. It normalizes it. It says, of course you have parts. We all do. It's how the human mind is structured. And underneath all of those parts is something deeper, yourself with a capital S. The self isn't a part. It's the essence of who you are. Calm, clear, compassionate, confident, curious, creative, connected, and courageous. The goal of healing then isn't to rid yourself of the parts, but to help them trust the self enough to step back from their protective roles and let this self energy lead the way, lead the internal system with all its parts. So then we need to understand the roles of our parts. In IFS, it recognizes three main categories of these parts. The exiles, and these are the wounded parts that carry the pain, the shame, the fear or trauma. They have often exiled when we were young because their pain felt too overwhelming. Then there's the managers. These parts try to prevent us from ever feeling that pain again. They manage our lives to keep everything under control. Hence, the perfectionist, the people pleaser, the critic, the controller. They manage it all proactively. And then we have the firefighters. These are the parts that step in reactively when pain threatens to surface. They might push us towards distraction, numbing, overworking, drinking, scrolling, anything to put out the emotional fire. And each of these parts, though, has a positive intention. Even the parts that cause chaos or distress, they are trying to help, just in misguided ways. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a perfectionist part. That part works incredibly hard to make sure you don't get criticized or rejected or humiliated. But underneath that perfectionist might be an exile, a younger part of you that still remembers being shamed for making a mistake. The perfectionist part learned, I can be perfect. Maybe I'll never have to feel that pain again. So that perfectionist isn't your enemy. It's your protector. When we see it that way, we move from judgment to compassion. And that's where true healing begins. Meeting the parts with curiosity. So the first step is that curiosity, which was one of those C's of self that I mentioned. When you notice a pattern, perfectionism, self-criticism, avoidance, whatever it is, instead of fighting it or judging it, pause and ask, what is this part trying to do for me? What is it afraid that would happen if it didn't do its job? And you might be surprised by what comes up. Maybe your anxious part says, if I don't worry, you'll get blindsided. Maybe your procrastinating part might say, if I don't slow you down, you might fail, feel humiliated. Maybe your angry part might say, if I don't push people away, you'll get hurt again. When we approach these parts with compassion instead of condemnation, they start to relax. They begin to trust that you, yourself, capital S, are capable of leading. And that's the key word in IFS, leadership. We want the self to be the leader here. So what exactly is this self-energy that we keep talking about? Self is not an idea. It's a felt experience. It's that calm, centered awareness that you touch when you're not fused with any one part. It's the part of you that can say, a part of me feels anxious right now, but I'm not anxiety. A part of me feels angry, but I'm more than that. The self is like the sun. It's always there, even when the clouds, which are our parts in this analogy, cover it. When you connect with the self energy, you can hold compassion for all of your parts, even the ones that act out in painful ways. Dr. Schwartz describes self energy as having the qualities of those 8 C's that I mentioned before: curiosity, calmness, clarity, compassion, confidence, courage, creativity, and connectedness. And when those qualities start to rise up in you, that's yourself showing up, that undisturbed essence of who you really are. And from that place, you can begin to heal, because the parts no longer have to go and run the show. So how healing actually happens isn't about forcing a part to change. It's about creating a relationship with it, one built on trust and understanding. So here's a quick recap of how that process often unfolds. You notice a pattern. Maybe you're procrastinating, criticizing yourself again. You pause and turn inward and ask yourself, or the part, what part of me is active right now? So you're separating from the part just enough to notice it. And you might say, I see you, perfectionist part. I get that you're here. So you get curious and ask it, what are you afraid would happen if you didn't do this job? And then you listen, really listen. And you might sense some fear, sadness, shame. You might even see an image of your younger self. Trust that these parts have their own wisdom and experience, and they will often communicate their message to you in different ways. And if the part was pre-verbal, when it became disturbed, it may just have a sensory feeling somewhere in your body. Others are more visual and show you a scene from the past. So just become curious and calm as you wait to receive a message, some form of communication from this part. And then you offer compassion. From the self, let that part know they do not have to carry this alone anymore, that you're here now. And when a part feels seen and understood and supported by the self, it begins to release its extreme roles. The exile it was protecting can finally unburden, and your whole internal system comes into greater harmony. I must preface this though, there is a sequence to it, You can't access the exile without addressing the protector parts first, in understanding them and their roles, their concerns, and their fears. Because if you dismiss them and you don't get their permission to approach the exile, they will come in and sabotage the show because they haven't understood that their role might be outdated now. They might need to be assigned a new role if they can see the exiled part is safe now and with the self. So remember, we're not getting rid of them. We're updating the protector's role. They have their own identity, and so we need to acknowledge and respect that about them and thank them. This role of protecting you, they have done so much, probably day in, day out. You're usually exhausted. So that's when what true healing looks like, not eliminating the parts, but integrating them into a system that's led by love, by the self. So let's talk about some ways that you can begin this work in your own life right now. One is to do daily check-ins. Take a few minutes each morning or evening to ask, who's here right now? What part of me needs my attention? Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and just notice what may arise. It might be a sensation, an emotion, a memory. You might be surprised by how much your internal world wants to communicate with you when you start listening. And then start to journal the messages from your parts. Open a blank page and write, part of me feels, and then fill in the blanks, whatever comes up. Another part of me thinks. These are just prompts. Prompt that discussion with the parts. And you can also say that myself says. So check in, back in with the self to get the view of the bigger view from the leader, from the part that's undisturbed by all of it. So let each voice have some space. And this kind of journaling can help you externalize that inner dialogue and bring awareness to the dynamics that is happening beneath the surface. This act of witnessing the parts is extremely therapeutic. It's also experiential. Remember, when we visualize something, whether in person or in our own mind, the brain doesn't know whether it's real or imagined. That's why we react so badly when we think all of the things. It's an event happening only in our mind, and yet our brain and body react as if it's happening for real, right here, right now. So witnessing a whole new way of experiencing a part sets up a very different dynamic and response internally, which leads us on to the next point, somatic awareness. Parts don't just live in your mind, they show up in your body. So notice where you feel the tension, the heaviness or constriction. Place your hand there, breathe into it and silently say, I'm here with you. Sometimes the body will reveal things words can't. Just because it's not intellectual, it's nonetheless real. The body always keeps score. It has cellular memory, which can be recalled and triggered. So pay attention to these physical cues and get curious about them. Seek to understand the message or information it has for you. So with the whole visualization thing, you can imagine a safe, calm space inside of you. Maybe it's a room, a garden, beach, and invite your parts to meet you there. See who shows up and how they feel. Approach them gently with curiosity. And you might say something like, thank you for everything you've done to protect me. I want to understand you. When you catch a part in real time, maybe you're about to procrastinate or overthink, pause, mentally say, hey, I see you. You don't have to take over right now. I've got this. So over time, your parts then start to trust that yourself can lead. And that trust is the foundation of transformation. One of the most beautiful truths of IFS is that there are no bad parts. Even the parts that behave destructively, the angry part that lashes out, the numbing part that drinks too much, the anxious part that spirals out of control, every single one of them has a positive intention. They're trying to protect you from pain. They're protecting the exile, the part that is holding on to the pain. They're trying to prevent that part from feeling the pain again. They don't want the pain of that original wound reactivated in any way. And so these protector parts get up to some pretty nifty tricks. However, they can often be destructive in some other way. But to these parts that were created to protect the exile, their only concern is that these wounds never reactivated, because that pain is too much to bear at that point. So they will do anything to protect that from happening again. And when you start to see that, you stop being at war with yourself. You begin to see your system as intelligent, adaptive, and deeply loyal, even when it's misguided. That's a profound shift from what's wrong with me to what happened to me and how did I learn to protect myself. And when you approach your system with that kind of compassion, something magical happens. Your energy returns, your self-energy. You stop being drained by that inner conflict. You feel more alive, more grounded, more you. So as you continue that journey, and after you have retrieved the exile and updated its age, its understanding, its beliefs about the world, you'll begin to notice more and more moments of self-energy shining through, moments of calm, clarity, even in the middle of chaos. Moments when you can feel anxious, but not become anxiety. Moments when you can hold space for your inner critic with kindness instead of fear. That's what it means to live from self. And the more you do that, the more your life changes. Not because the world around you is different, but because the leader inside you has awakened. You start to respond rather than react. You start to choose rather than default to whatever pattern or protector role comes in to save the day. And you start to love rather than judge. That's healing at the root. That's what it means to come home to yourself. There is one caveat here, though. I would highly recommend going through this process with a professional who has trained in IFS. You don't want to go anywhere near trauma if you don't really know what you're doing here. This is not about re-traumatizing the exile. It's about freeing them. It's a whole new way of reprocessing that doesn't leave you feeling re-traumatized. It's a very gentle and beautiful way of processing through to healing all of it. So before we close, I just want to guide you through a short reflection. If you can take a deep breath and let your shoulders just drop. Just notice your inner world and ask yourself, what part of me has been working really hard lately? Maybe it's the part that's been anxious, or the one that's been critical, or the one that's been exhausted. So if you can just imagine that part as an image, a color, a sensation, and from your calm awareness, say to it, thank you, everything you've done for me. I know you've been trying to keep me safe. I'm here with you now. You're not alone. And just breathe with that for a moment. Notice how it feels when compassion enters the space. That's the beginning of healing. Not a technique, not a fix. It's a relationship. So I want you to remember that you don't need to fight your patterns. You need to understand every part of you. The anxious part, perfectionist part, procrastinator, one that wants to give up. They all formed for a reason. They were born in moments when your system needed protection. And when you stop exiling them and instead invite them back into your heart, you stop living in fragmentation. You become whole again. That's what true healing is. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you already are beneath all the layers of protection. That's yourself. Calm, compassionate, connected, courageous, confident, clear, curious, and creative. And when you learn to lead from that place, life stops being a battlefield and becomes a dialogue, an ongoing conversation with your inner world, grounded in love and compassion. So if this episode resonated, take a few moments after it ends to journal or just sit in the stillness with it and ask yourself, which parts of me are ready to be seen with compassion? Because healing begins the moment you turn towards yourself with love. Until next time, take care of all your parts. See you soon.